Midst of many things. So let's call the meeting to order. And if each of you would introduce yourselves and say what your particular attachment to this committee is. Peter, why don't we start with you?
Peter Ward, Select Board appointee.
Thank you. Tom?
Tom Kern, Select Board appointee.
Paul?
Recreation Committee appointee, Paul Baum.
Thank you. Nancy?
Historical Commission, Nancy Nelson.
Thank you. Charles?
Charles Phillips, Housing Authority.
Thank you. Sarah?
Sarah Grimwood, Natural Resources Commission.
Thank you. John Kratsley?
John Kratsley for Select Board appointee.
Thank you. And Diane Proctor, Select Board appointee and the chair for this year. And welcome to Escobedo. And I don't know who the S is, but I'm sure we will find out. I see a big S, but I don't know who's there. Heather very kindly sent some documents to you all that came up at the Select Board meeting last evening and appeared in an email a couple of days ago. One was from Keith Bergman and the Concord housing development. The county, I'm going to say this properly this time.
Trust.
Yes, the Concord Municipal Affordable Housing Trust, CMAHT. And I wanted us to see this because it's pertinent to our work. And it allows us, it provokes me to ask a question. And I know this is not the first thing on our agenda, but I want to bring it up right from the get-go. Do we know, Heather, what is happening with the property on Commonwealth Avenue?
So I don't know for sure. I haven't been looped in on those conversations. I believe because of current construction costs, the project is unfeasible. So they're looking to turn it over to like Habitat for Humanity. So it'll still be an affordable housing unit, but constructed not by the Housing Authority, or I can't remember who off the top of my head. I think the Housing Authority. So it would be constructed by like another company.
Okay.
But I don't know like how, if that's been finalized or anything, or if that's just the plan that they're trying to work towards right now.
Okay.
Yeah, I can add to that. That in fact
Charles, go ahead.
We're preparing or have sent out an RFP for a developer to come in and to build that house as we have specified it, along with taking over the adjoining house, which is also on owned by the Housing Authority now,
right.
And that and asking for a bid for somebody to do that, and then to propose what they will create, what kind of housing they will create after that. The two houses would be in a condominium. Housing Authority will continue to own the land, and it basically will not be a Housing Authority house, any houses anymore, but they will be affordable income houses below to the extent that at the level at which they will be counted on the state housing inventory.
Thank you very much. So
they could, and we don't know what will be proposed by the various developers, but
developers who make it. Thank you, Charles, for bringing us up to date on that. Heather, how much of that money is sitting in kind of, I don't know if the right term is escrow, is that the right term? I mean, how much of that money is sitting there?
If you give me a few minutes, I'll look.
Okay, thank you. That would be just a good thing to know, because at the present moment, we have a commitment to that money, and yet we've gone for a year, and yet it has not yet been spent. So I just wanted to bring us up to date on that. And the second thing I wanted to bring us up to date on is that there was a discussion at the Select Board about the Assabet River Bridge project, and there was some concern. And I don't think concern is too strong a word, and I'd ask Linda to join me in this conversation, but there was some concerns about the costs of that particular project. But as you can see from what was forwarded, Marcia has done a very detailed breakdown of what the costs are going to be and what the funding is going to be. And I think there was a general relief that so much of that is going to be absorbed by the state, and that our initial contribution to that project, which we voted on for this coming year, is really well spent seed money to move this project forward. One person testified that since 2013, they have been hearing about this Assabet River Bridge project, and therefore are enormously pleased to hear that it's finally going forward. So Linda, are you there? Hello. I believe I'm accurately representing the select board's discussion. And I think I don't think whatever residual skepticism there was about that is still there. Am I accurate, Linda?
Yeah, I think that's a good summary. And, you know, with this seed money of $710,000 total from the town, it could lead to, you know, additional 5 million put in by the state for that bridge.
Exactly. And one of the wonderful things that we learned, of course, from talking with Marcia, is that if they get them in there and they have it's actually not a very big project from their perspective. If we sneak in there and get it in there as fast as we can, we might get the money sooner than we would if we were in an even longer queue. So that that getting this now out there is a good idea. But I wanted everyone to know that this was discussed at the select board meeting. I have been asked to go to FinCom on the 24th of February and discuss that project, as well as the Assabet River, not the bridge, but the other project. And so I think there is still ongoing discussion in various committees about what the long-term commitments from the town may be for the various projects that we have provided either seed money for, mostly seed money for, because we have not provided the entire funding that will be necessary for those projects. So I just wanted to alert everyone to the fact that those are ongoing discussions in various boards. And any advice you have for me before I go before FinCom would be greatly appreciated. So, yes, Tom.
I have a question about the first update on the ComAv affordable housing project. Given the structural changes that are proceeding, does that suggest that we will need to or want to re-review the funding for that project?
I believe that's the reason I brought this up, Tom.
Okay.
And I don't know what the protocol is, Heather.
So was $300,000 that was allocated in 2020 towards the construction of a single family affordable dwelling. So I think it would be appropriate, maybe once it gets turned over, or the housing authority chooses a developer, to perhaps bring it to the CPC just as an update, more so that this is the developer that will be building, as long as it's still a single family affordable dwelling. I don't see an issue with it, but I think it would be helpful to have something in the file stating that it won't be built by the housing authority and this is who it will be built by, and that sort of thing.
Yeah. Have some of the funds been used?
No, none of the funds have been spent yet.
Tom,
Thank you.
can I ask you your
Yeah.
insightful question? You're okay?
Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have questions about either of the items that we've just discussed? John?
Is March 3rd still also a FinCom appearance? Are you going twice?
Yes, well, March 3rd is a FinCom appearance, and it is the public hearing, and you can see that's on our agenda, and that's actually on the agenda as opposed to the two items that I added to the agenda by sending those documents forward. Yes, we have the public hearing on March 3rd. I've already presented once to the select board, as you will recall. And I believe, Tom, you were there when I did that. We will do that again. I'm unclear how much detail we need to present, but I do know that in the past, we've actually, as I recall, Tom went through every single item and gave people a chance to comment and then moved on. Tom, is that your recollection? Could you school us in how you managed that last year?
I'm not sure I can school us. And my great mentor was John, who did an excellent job through a tricky one the year before. But yeah, but it does move along fairly brief in brief fashion. So it does create the opportunity for the community to ask questions. But I think Heather puts together a nice succinct package that you can move through
Slideshow that we moved through.
pretty quickly. And there may be, a couple that catch their attention and then they want to get some more depth on. And I think that the applicants are also potentially present to assist, as I recall.
Yeah, putting together that slideshow is on my to-do list next week, Diane. So
Thank
by
you.
the end of next week, I will have a draft slideshow to you for approval.
You're brilliant. Do we inform the applicants that this needs to be, that their presence is advised?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
I have let them know already. I sent out like funding allocation letters, just let them know that the CPC has recommended funding for town meeting. Doesn't mean it's been approved yet because it needs to be voted at town meeting. And that there is a finance committee public hearing to be held on March 3rd. That the chair of the CPC will be presenting, but they are asked to attend in case there are any questions you cannot answer.
Okay.
And I'll also send out a reminder email with that Zoom link a few days ahead of time too.
That's terrific.
Heather, the other thing, and Diane, that I recall is that we try to position ourselves early on that agenda. Oh, John, were you
Yeah, I was
going
gonna
there?
say the same thing. We always ask the chair to be first because it's a
That was a
long,
good idea.
it's a long wait for the, what's usually the school committee next.
Okay. Well, Heather, we'll put, are you going to be in charge of negotiating that position on the agenda?
I can send that email tomorrow and I'll CC you.
Thank you. Let us hope that we have sufficient sway to be able to do that. If not, now I believe this is an in-person public hearing. Again, I don't, as the caucus was, I think we're still required to be at the town. I'm required to be at the town hall. And I do have a nice, good NK95 or KN95 or a fumigated mask that I can wear. And I've been there a couple of times, so I feel reasonably comfortable doing that. Charles.
Oh, just to follow up on the Assabet Bluff project.
Right.
Does anyone know, is the plan that the town of Concord will be the buyer at the purchase and sale agreement?
That's what it says under the conditions. If you look at the sheet that Heather's, I'm sure you did, when you recall looking at the sheet that Heather sent out about the various conditions for various projects, it says that the town is the procurer of that land.
I highlighted that because I need to double check.
Okay.
Okay, yeah.
Do you
And
think that's wrong for one reason or another, Charles?
the other question, well, no problem, but the other question I have is, if the town is the purchaser, does that mean there has to be a warrant article asking the town meeting approval for purchasing the land?
We have asked this question, Charles, because my original understanding was that we would be removing this item from the CPC list, and that the town, I mean, we originally heard that the town would be presenting a warrant on this one. And then we were told, oh, no, that wasn't the case. So Heather, you may have the most up-to-date information on this.
Right, so what we figured out was that the CPC allocation could be within the CPC warrant article because we're just allocating funding towards the project. There will be a separate warrant article for the town or whichever town board is going to acquire the property.
Did I see the warrant come out today?
The warrant was published and adjusted at the select board meeting last week. I have a copy of it right here.
I think I had a notice about it today, but I didn't.
Oh,
read
did
it.
you? Well, I've been using the town government committee for the League of Women Voters has been poring over it. So hold on just a minute.
Okay.
I do not see, it must be in, just quickly do a scan. I don't see a specific warrant article
Okay.
that addresses the purchase. I think it has to do with free cash and the transfer of free cash
Oh,
is what I think. Heather, do you have a different perspective on this, or Linda, help us out here?
Yeah, there is a specific warrant article for the Assabet River Bluff project.
Oh, yes, there is. Here it is. Interim town manager, Assabet River Bluff, number 25.
Yeah.
Thank you, Linda. So there it is. So does that answer your question, Charles?
Yeah.
good to know.
Yes, it does. Yes. Yes, you're comfortable with that response?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, terrific. Okay. We're also been dealing, the select board has also been dealing with ARPA funds. And so that's been an ongoing discussion that the select board has been having, and the League's Town Government Committee has also been having discussions about the ARPA funds. And I think we will probably eventually write a very simple letter to the select board about transparency and process. So, all right, moving forward. So any questions about those two items before we go forward to the draft conditions? Okay. So let's start with the draft conditions and let's go project by project. I presume do you all have copies of it right in front of you, or do you want Heather to put it up on a screen? Yeah, I do too. I'm a nastic. I print out everything, but I don't know if everybody else does that. Does everybody have a copy or an alternative screen to which they can turn? And Paul, you're back from Hawaii.
I am. I made it back.
Yeah, and no COVID, and you're fine?
I am. I actually was in the emergency room because I got hit by a wave and got knocked out. And it's a long story.
Oh,
But yeah,
Oh,
so
Those
John,
waves are bigger over there.
yeah. I don't want to. It's not in the minutes, so I don't discuss it right now.
well, John and Paul, we're not going to meet in Hawaii after all. That had been our plan, but I guess not. Okay. Okay, if everybody has that in front of them, let's start with the first one, A, the regional housing services. Does anyone have any commentary on the regional housing services program? CPA funds shall be used to fund half of Concord's membership fee. The remaining funds left in the account after the membership is paid shall be used to fund other a la carte services. And the CPC may request copies of any periodic reports issued to the town on this program. Are we all pretty comfortable with those conditions? Do we feel like we need any additional conditions? Okay. I think we'll take it as a document of the whole rather than voting each one. Does that make sense to everybody? And if we need emendations along the way, we can pull one out. Does that make sense to everybody? Yes, as a process? Okay. 110 Walden Street Preservation Project, Phase 4, Concord Home for the Aged. And this one's the details are a little bit more explicit. CPA funds shall be used to implement several of the major projects recommended by the historic structures, including repairing the siding, the exterior of the house, basement foundation repairs, granite stair alignment and repointing, asbestos removal, and fascia and column repairs on the front of the house. The applicant shall submit to the CPC full sets of plans or specifications for the work. The grantee shall submit a copy of the signed contracts or contracts. Any project work on the exterior of the building that results in a change of the design or the material, color, or outward appearance has to be approved by the Historic District Commission. All work shall be completed in accordance with the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation. And a copy of the standards, Heather, is going to be nicely attached. And to the degree applicable, a permanent sign acknowledging the Concord Community Preservation Fund support of this project. Heather, how many of those signs do we still have?
So I just got the signs that I ordered back in June.
Yeah.
So I have 2 of the large signs, and I have 7 of the small wall plaque signs.
Okay.
So maybe at a future meeting, we need to
Figure-
look through open projects and projects that are currently under construction, and try to distribute some of those signs. And then some of the like small plaques are generally used as like permanent signs after construction is completed. So we can look at some of those projects and reach out to the applicants and see if they're interested in one.
That's terrific, Heather. Thank you so much. I know that's an ongoing, something about which we care. Yeah, Paul.
Yeah, I'm curious, these 6 conditions, are these virtually the same as last year for the 110 Walden? Yeah,
They're pretty routine, Paul. Yeah.
okay.
The only difference is the detail about what they're doing. Because last year it was a different set of endeavors that they were undertaking. So this year it specifies those. But in general, it's not that these are, in any way a kind of a routine, so routine that they're just a boilerplate, but there is a kind of protocol that goes with each of them. And that's a good question to have asked. Thank you.
Hey, Diane,
Yes.
I had a question. I should know this, but I don't. Who actually issues the certificate of appropriateness?
Heather?
The Historic Districts Commission.
It's-
So
Okay.
generally, the 110 Walden has not needed HDC approval because everything they're doing is kind of like repairs, that sort of thing. They did recently come to HDC for removing the fire escape and changing some of the doors that led out to the fire escape back to windows.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, conditions for projects recommended for CPA funding. Whoops, yeah. Which one is this one? The old man's. Again, the CPA funds shall be used to support the painting of the entire structure, main block, summer kitchen, shop, shed, and shutters. And you remember there was some discussion about the appropriateness of that. Do you all remember? There
Yep.
was some discussion about the legality of that, but I think that's been sorted out since then. And related carpentry work that must be addressed prior to painting, including repairs to trim doors and window frames. And I think on our visit, it was clear that these were more than just superficial, even kind of contributions to that structure. The applicant shall submit to the CPC, and now here's where we get a little more boilerplate, a full set of plans or specifications for the proposed work. The grantee shall submit a copy of the signed contract or contracts. Any project work on the exterior of the building that results in a change in the design must go through the Historic Districts Commission. All work shall be completed in accordance with the Secretary of Interior standards. A copy will be attached to the approval, and to the degree applicable, a permanent sign will be acknowledging the CPC contribution. Are there any additions anyone would like to make to that particular set?
I don't, but I have a question about, is this the copy of the Secretary of the Interior standards, does it include the guidelines? Or is it just the very simplified version of the standards?
Generally just the simplified version.
Would you
Okay.
like it to be more explicit?
We
than
can
that?
always change that though.
If nobody's bothering to think about them, I don't think it matters. No, it gives you, the standards give you the general idea. But the guidelines are really actually very specific about different kinds of work and very helpful if you're actually following chapter and verse.
I think that's really an important comment, Nancy, because it certainly has been part of our discourse, has it not?
Yeah.
Throughout this season. And so Heather, perhaps with those, we could attach an HTTP, here's
A link.
specifics, so
yeah.
that we won't have to print those out, but
Oh, that's a great idea.
a good
Okay.
clear link to that.
And yeah,
And an encouragement to review, to have someone on their board review that link with care.
Yeah.
Does that make sense to everybody? Okay, in each case where this is attached, does that seem to make sense to everybody?
Yeah,
Yes.
it's like good common sense to me.
Okay. The Wright Tavern structural repairs, the Wright Tavern Legacy Trust and Trustees. The CPA funding shall be used towards the following. Support ridge beam and annex, remove do you see spalling? I almost tried to.
Falling,
Falling. What is falling, Nancy?
flaking off,
Witty, what?
flaking, like disintegrating and flaking.
Well, so goodness, so then we definitely want to remove this falling. Bricks in the basement. Add post and beam. Who knew? I never knew that had a name. I love that word. Repoint exterior foundation brick and fieldstone foundation cracks. A new subfloor in the attic, a new plaster in the attic. Redo an outdated wiring in building. Install moisture barriers in crawl space under the sunroom. Site supervision, clerk of the works administration, historic preservation advisors, preservation, design and building architects, structural engineering, legal for preparation of PR. And we all know what that, does everybody remember what that is?
Yes, it was a condition of the first grant.
That's
the
exactly
preservation restriction.
And so we're saying we must have that and other contracts, and contingency for unforeseen structural issues in the building and anticipated inflation. The applicant shall have a team of experts. Now here's where we really want to dig down and look at this one very carefully, please. The applicant shall have a team of experts familiar with the Secretary of Interior standards of rehabilitation involved during the exploratory and reinforcement stages of work inside the structure. The applicant and or the consultants shall be responsible for maintaining a photographic log of any areas that are uncovered. During the applicant's preparation for work, all historic architectural elements now stored in areas that will be disturbed, primarily attic and basement, will be moved to safely inventoried and photographed. iPhone photos are acceptable. The applicant shall submit to the CPC and the Historic Commission, and please note that, a full set of plans or specifications for the proposed work to be completed with CPA funds. All plans and materials may be submitted in digital form when possible.
I have a general question.
Okay, go, Nancy.
Do you want comments on these as we go along?
I'd like to read
or
through the whole thing for just a minute and then let's go
the
back.
whole
Is
thing?
that okay?
Yeah, that's fine.
Is that all right with you?
No, fine.
Everybody. The grantee shall submit a copy of the signed contract or contracts for the work to be completed. Any project work on the exterior of the building that results in a change in the design, material, color, or the outward appearance thereof shall be reviewed and approved by the Historic District Commission. A copy of the certificate of appropriateness should be submitted for the CPC's files. All work shall be completed in accordance with the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation, and that the work disturb as little of the interior and exterior historic fabric of the structure as possible. A copy of the standards is attached. And in this case, I think a particular emphasis on encouraging their board to review all aspects of that document. The preservation restriction required as a condition of funding for the 2021 funding allocation to Wright Tavern will be in place prior to the annual town meeting 2022. The preservation restriction, that's the PR, will be reviewed and approved by the Concord Historical Commission and the Concord Community Preservation Committee prior to being adopted. To the degree applicable, a permanent sign acknowledging Concord's CPC's funding. Okay, Nancy, you want to start us?
Oh, do you want? Okay, we'll go back to that.
Okay.
I'm speaking now a little bit as the treasurer to note that some of the purposes in the initial grant are still overlapping with the items that money can be spent on in the second grant. And I'm wondering, several of the categories overlap. And I'm wondering if that's, if it's possible, without plans, it's maybe very, very difficult to separate exactly what they're seeking funding for in phase 1 versus phase 2. And I have to sign off on these, although a consultant of mine says that I will be obligated to sign off on whatever the committee says, but I'm not sure what the committee is saying.
Okay.
Because there's so many specific items that overlap.
So is your recommendation therefore, Nancy, to put asterisks next to those items which were part of the original phase 1 application and put an asterisk on this document so indicating?
I would like guidance from the committee and maybe town council on how to handle things that are funded in both places theoretically. And when I know they've already submitted something, Heather, I forget exactly what, maybe for the cost of the PR.
Yes.
In the first grant agreement, it was clear that the cost of the CR was the grantee is responsible for all costs associated with drafting and recording the preservation agreement. So the second list here includes costs, legal costs for the preparation of the PR. So I'm not sure how to handle some of those things. And the consulting costs too were as a proportion.
Phase 1, right.
Yeah, as a proportion of phase 1, the consulting costs were probably going to be much lower than the full cost of consulting services, because I think they said the engineering services alone were going to be $60,000 or something. So just trying to sort out phase 1 and phase 2 and to keep, I mean, for the committee's protection as well, I think we probably need some guidance on what we're funding. I could say the consultation services, Lally columns to support the joists in the basement, I think are overlapping. In the crawl space under the sunroom might be overlapping. I'm back at the first grant. Removal of spalling bricks in the basement, repointing of the exterior foundation, the ridge beam and the annex. There was something for the annex in this one, but yeah, it's the same. Support for the ridge beam and the annex in both places. So there are quite a few items that are the same.
That's the reason I was thinking an asterisk, Nancy, might indicate that these are really part of the initial, the first, and not necessarily completed work from phase 1. But that was my quick and easy solution to something that is reasonably complicated.
Yeah, it is going to be complicated. And I think maybe if I could have someone look at the budget with me, I know Tom spent a lot of time on that. If he can tease those things apart specifically, it would be a great help for me.
I'd be happy to.
Reviewing these things, because I'm quite confused right now and think that the bulk of what we just funded might, well, I don't know. It doesn't, I mean, we don't have plans and we don't know what the increase actual increases in costs are going to be. Do we know that there's a team in place at this point? I know Tom mentioned that they were talking to a historical firm that was going to manage and oversee the PR and the whole project. Do we know if they've got a contract with anybody at this point?
I don't know. Do you know, Tom?
No, I have no update.
Yeah, I don't either. So
I keep checking the Historic Commission's agenda. I've been trying to attend their meetings. I couldn't attend the last one, but I've been trying to watch their meetings very carefully to see if it comes up there.
No, not since
It has not.
our
Since
last meeting when they presented.
in January. Yep, right. Paul, you have a question.
Yeah, it's a question which likely reveals my ignorance of the historical processes, but what, I don't see the term building permit, but what's the town's role in overseeing the project from a classic building permit point of view, wiring and everything else, just standard building conditions.
Heather, do you have an answer for that?
They would need to just submit a building permit application like any other project.
Like every other project, I think, Paul.
Okay, so that doesn't have to be in here. That's given, that's understood. Yeah.
Right. And the building inspector has actually already reached out to them just to make sure, because he I don't know how it came across his desk, but I think he saw that CPC was funding it. And he saw like exploratory work and that sort of thing. And he wanted to make sure nothing had happened because he hadn't received a building permit application yet. So he's already had a discussion with them about it as well.
Great. I can see it being kind of a challenge for inspectors who are used to kind of classic construction projects and putting thumbs up, especially, old wiring. Well, the wiring part is probably straightforward. It's the other parts that are tough. Okay, understood.
Thank you.
So a couple of other thoughts on the second condition where it starts during the applicant's preparation for work. I think this work has been done, and we haven't seen any photographs or any report on that, but I think mostly the artifacts and elements that were going to be affected have been moved, and I'm not sure what the status is of the catalog.
I think you're absolutely right. I think we were told, at least, I haven't seen that physically, but we were told that they had been moved someplace else.
Yeah, and there was going to be a photographic inventory or log as well. We might want to check on that, but I think it's probably been done. And is there any thought on number 3 about when the CPC and the CHC would want to review and maybe okay the plans, or at least review, see them? When do we want to see those? After?
I was just thinking, we say before the town meeting that there are certain things that we need in place, and so we have 2 months.
So maybe that's
February and March, and I think
they won't. I don't think they'll have plans before town meeting. Would you guess, Tom? I bet not.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think what we discussed was prior to beginning the work.
Prior. Okay, so I could add that.
Now, well, yeah, now it's fairly nuanced given that they are doing some surgical, demolition and observation in there. So, but prior
do you
to
think that's actually part of the exploratory work, as opposed to, are they working from plans to do some of the work in phase 1? Do you know?
I don't know. I'm not exactly familiar with their methodology is, but I would say that for some types of exploratory work, you would have some type of documentation to follow.
Yeah,
It's not just sending people into a structure and having them starting to open up stuff. Typically, especially if it's with regard to the superstructure, typically a structural engineer would instruct the team as to how to proceed, because if there's a problem, I mean, basically you want it to be done properly and safely, but also there needs to be a path of liability. And so the engineers have the liability insurance for something that could go wrong.
Yeah, so we don't know what's coming out of the exploratory yet. I don't think that's fair to say.
I think we don't. John, do you have, I'd love to hear from you, and I'm going to ask you then, everybody, a question. Go ahead.
Well, I withdrew my hand because I wanted to defer to Tom. I was simply going to make the observation that much of this inquiry or need for inquiry has really, on so many projects over time, fallen into Heather's hands as sort of watching the flow of a project. I got last year's conditions out, and these are virtually word for word the same as last year's, and the same as we set for virtually every other project where we have certain requirements about plans and specifications, contracts. I'm just not sure we need to set on this one project, different for everybody else, a set of specific dates or questions about have you done this and when have you done it. I'm much more trusting of our staff.
Yeah, I think we're all trusting of our staff. I don't think that's the issue. I think it's a question of, in what order how do things proceed from, from A to B to C to D? Yes, Nancy?
I'd just like to point out that a project that this committee has referenced a lot, very often, is the Home for the Aged and the process that was followed there. And I think it was a 3-part process where the plans and specs were developed first with consultation with historical people. Then they came for money, then they came for more money, whatever, that it followed logical sequence. In this case, we don't have any plans or specifications. So that, to me, argues for a different kind of accountability. And I hope that this is just seen that way. I'm not trying to pick on them. I'm just, it's over $500,000 and will probably be over $1 million easily by the time phase 3 and 4 come forward.
We've already spent a lot on this project in other ways too. I mean, that's, so.
Yeah, even before these two.
I would.
And what's been presented to us before for other projects for First Parish were very well documented and researched from the beginning.
Absolutely. I wonder if I could draw your attention to item number 7. And even though we've heard this before, I want to make sure that we are all in accordance with what it means. The preservation restriction required as a condition of funding for the 2021 funding allocation to Wright Tavern will be in place prior to annual town meeting 2022. The preservation restriction will be reviewed and approved by the Historical Commission and the Concord Community Preservation Committee prior to being adopted. That says to me that they need to have that before town meeting. Now, I could be reading it poorly or not understand it, but I'd like to hear other people's reactions to it. Heather?
I just want to make a note. I drafted it just as a first draft based on the condition of the motion for the vote.
Right.
In consultation a little bit, I had a meeting with Stuart Saganor last week, and he was just kind of asking for an update on this. And he had noted that in order to have a preservation restriction in place, it has to be approved by Massachusetts Historical Commission. And he said, we'd be lucky to have that in place and approved by them by next year's town meeting. So maybe we need to mess with the wording a little bit on this condition about it being approved by the town and ready to send to the Massachusetts Historical Commission instead of being in place, because I don't think that's possible
So what
for it
about
to happen. So I just drafted the condition based on the motion, but I wanted to have that discussion tonight.
Well, thank you. We're having it. Okay. So I would think perhaps we might use the language in anticipation of the approval of blum, 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 blum. In other words, let's look at it. The preservation restriction required as a condition of the funding of the Wright Tavern will be in place or will be submitted. I think we should ask them to submit it prior to the annual town meeting in anticipation of eventual approval by the state. And that will get them going on that preservation restriction, which they need to get going, I think they can do that in 2 months. And is that wrong-minded, Tom, and people who are better at this than I? Tom?
Well, I wonder I think that's an important bit of information, Heather, and I've been through some of these processes on other projects. I wonder, could Mass Historic be included in the review group, even if it took them quite a long time to fully process it? Could they issue a rather immediate advisory opinion? If there were anything that were a kind of fundamental problem, it'd be nice for us to.
Right. I mean, I think if we had something now to send to them, we may, have something back from them before town meeting.
Right.
But I mean, the Historical Commission hasn't even seen a first draft of this yet. So I wouldn't want to send anything to Mass Historical until Historical Commission has reviewed and approved it.
Yeah, well,
And that may be months away.
if I may, and it is ours, I think the burden is not solely ours, it also is the applicants to present this quandary to them and ask for their proposal,
Right.
you know?
I had something written down that they were coming to us on the 15th of March.
I did too.
That's correct.
With
Yeah,
a
I think-
question mark.
Yeah, I think we had discussed like the timeline of meetings. But the Historical Commission doesn't meet again until March 26th. And they've had no contact with me to get on a Historical Commission meeting yet. Historical Commission meeting met last week.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because they, I presume they could meet in some sort of an emergency session if they had to. But,
We have a lot of emergencies right now, believe it or not.
I mean,
your committee, Nancy, is meeting constantly as far as I can tell. One thing after another, egads. But I mean, I don't know how we can, I mean, what is everybody's advice? I mean,
Well, I don't know if we can pop up what the language was in the first grant, but it's pretty good. With some tinkering in when the draft restriction will be developed, but it's in the first draft, it says it will be developed prior to the finalization of plans and specs for the project and reviewed and approved by CHC Town Council and as required by Massachusetts Historical Committee or Commission.
So
And recorded at the Registry of Deeds, which is what Burton was getting to.
right.
And then the grantee is responsible for all costs associated with it.
So then we should take the language from last year and put it in here rather than
I
what we
think
have right
it's
now.
pretty good, except I really like the idea of being able to see a draft since it's been over a year, well, a long time. And they have engaged counsel on that, so maybe maybe the March date is still reasonable and maybe the Historical Commission could somehow review it. I don't know.
I don't either. We've also got, the Historic Commission meets in April before the May 1st town meeting. So there is one more opportunity for them to review things. But I think we need to put some encouragement under this group to get it going. So we're not back in this, conundrum again at any point in the future. Paul.
Yeah, I agree.
I need some help in translation here. So I'm hearing that we need to, that plans need to be developed and submitted. I hear the preservation restriction is needed. Those aren't the same things. And I seem to hear that both of those are required before town meeting. The question for our committee, what is actually required for us to bring this forward to town meeting? Because obviously those can't all be done and get state approval. So what is the minimum that we need to put this forward to help this project along, understanding that those other things are going to have to be in place at some point, but that point is not town meeting.
Right.
so the plans are not required prior to town meeting.
Right.
There was a specific condition in the motion to allocate funding for this project that the PR is in place prior to town meeting. So that's why I think that's the only thing, but we just need to fiddle with the in place because it can't be approved by the state by that point in time, but it could be ready to be sent to the state.
That's what I meant by in preparation and anticipation.
Yeah, exactly.
Prepared and anticipation of the state approval. But I mean, I think that it seems to me, given any number of conversations, thoughtful conversations we've had, that really continuing to move them along on this project and process is pretty important. So perhaps, may I make a recommendation? We'll see if we think this is okay. We send them a note. We is the wonderful, you know what Mark Twain said about the pronoun we? Have I told you this?
What?
There are only 3 people who can use the pronoun we. The king, in this case, the queen, might be a king pretty soon. The queen, although he has COVID. The queen, editors of newspapers, to write their editorial, we believe, and then people with tapeworm. So, no, people. Anyway, so the royal we, Heather, maybe we could drop a note to our friends at Wright Tavern,
Okay.
and say that we need by April 15th to see a very thorough draft of their preservation restriction proposal.
Okay, I'll send them a reminder
And,
email.
and say that this is, this is important. We understand it can't be completed, that it requires state approval and everything else, but that we need to see clear progress on this.
By April, what did you say, 15th?
I'll just say as soon as possible because it
Yeah.
needs to go to the historical commission first.
I
Oh,
would-
okay,
Yeah,
okay.
but I would say we need to see a draft of it by March 15th so that they can present it to the historic.
Oh, okay. By March 15th.
I
Okay,
don't think that's impossible. Now, help me for those of you who have had to put together
so
such a thing. Is it that hard? I mean, is it that?
the meat of it is not that hard, and they have historical architect and a historical architectural conservator, and maybe they have engaged a historical or a preservation firm that will help them manage the project.
Yeah.
I don't know that they have or not, so maybe
Well,
that's going to be
that's-
hard for them.
That's a full month from now. If for some reason they can't do that, then they need to
Okay.
connect with us.
Okay, yeah.
Because
Diane, when you say we need to see it, does that mean we need to see it and review it and, have our local approval on it? How far?
we don't need to do that, Paul. The group that
Okay.
needs to see it and approve it is the Historic Commission.
Well,
But
we,
So we need to know it's in process is what I'm trying to say.
well, but the condition, the we as CPC and the Historical Commission
And
need
yes,
to see it, and they, meaning the Historical Commission, needs to review it.
that's exactly. Well, I mean, we'll look at it, but it's the Historic Commission that is the final adjudicator, I believe. Yes.
Before
Heather?
town meeting. Okay.
The
Okay.
motion, the condition in the motion was that it's approved by the historical commission prior to CPC's final sign off on it.
But I definitely think we want to review it because it had some significant issues in that
That's
last draft.
exactly right,
Yeah.
And is this March 15th or April 15th? I lost track of the.
March 15th. Now, if they can't meet that, then at the very latest, April 15th. And I think if we don't do this, we're going to continue to find treading water. Does this seem imperious to others, or does it seem sensible? I'd like to hear honest commentary.
I think Nancy alluded to the 110 Walden project. I think we need to get this project right on that track. So I think we need to keep getting it toward that track.
Okay. How do
Another one thing I wanted to note about this, the first condition, I just took their very last PowerPoint that they had sent us with the list of things that they were
Yeah.
asking for funding
Right.
for. So that's why I included, they had a line for legal for preparing the PR.
I
we
saw
were
that
very-
taken it right.
Very clear in last year's condition that the cost of preparing the PR fell upon the applicant. And I don't know how it would work if we funded the PR when it's supposed to be in place prior to this funding even being allocated. So I would probably recommend removing that because it doesn't really make sense to me that it's listed as a fundable item, even though it's supposed to be completed prior to this funding even being voted on.
So you mean L under the list of the legal for preparation of the PR and other contracts?
Yeah, that would be my recommendation.
Okay, that makes sense.
And that's not the only issue of overlap. That's one of the things I did highlight, but there's other overlaps.
Others,
Tom's
Yeah, I think
not said
the
he
oth- I think the other overlap Tom explained, they needed additional funding for, because I specifically asked why why this was being requested again, and he said they needed more funding. So I think to answer your question, Nancy, about how we reimburse them for that work when it's in phase 1 and phase 2, perhaps we just need to sit down and we look at the budget of what they said they needed for each
Oh, no.
item in each phase, and just have a document in the file that when they do submit for reimbursement, we can just look at that document and it says, okay, they said they needed $5,000 for the Lally columns in phase 1. So we're only going to fund, we're only going to reimburse up to $5,000 for that item in phase 1. And they said they needed 10,000 in phase 2. So we can reimburse up to 10,000 for that item in phase 2. And I think that would be a really easy way to handle that.
Well, except for that's 3 times what was requested to do the same work in phase 1.
I think she's doing that as an example.
Maybe.
I
I think we need to be clearer on what the budget is.
Okay.
But I
Mhm.
I don't.
Right,
Go ahead. Tom.
I agree with you, Nancy. I really do. I think that phase 1, I don't have it in front of me. But I worked with these guys outside the workings of the group to try to get them to be as clear as possible. And, you have to continue to maybe help them in that regard. Phase 1 was focused on structural stabilization in the immediate future. I mean, there were immediate needs for structural stabilization, and that was the allocation of phase 1. To my knowledge, there were other things that were directly related to that, but those did not include new plaster or wiring. This was structural stabilization, phase 1. And now there's other components as part of phase 2 that are, some of which are itemized here. And there may be some supplemental structural stabilization, but I think they should make that clear.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So we need to, before we approve D on these draft conditions, once again, we need to pull out outright tavern and get some clarification.
Yeah, we don't have to approve any of these draft conditions at tonight's meeting. They can be done at a.
I think we're going to be able to go right through it, Heather, except for that one. I mean, I think we're going to find that
Okay.
we're in pretty good shape with all the others. And so then, at least in my reading of it, I thought we were in pretty good shape, except for that one.
And I will work on editing that condition
Okay,
7 for the next meeting.
good. And communicate with them. I think the importance of having this done as expediently as possible, because I think if we don't, we're going to be right back where we were. And if it takes that long for a PR to be approved, can they proceed without it? So I mean, the whole thing is I mean, we don't want it to back up so much that they have no opportunity to meet their own goals. Yes, Tom.
Thank you, Heather. Small detail, but I don't want to forget. On number 3, the applicant shall submit. I would make an edit, a full set of plans and specifications instead of or, because and then later in the next sentence, it's plans and materials. So maybe it's a triplet, maybe it's a set of plans, specifications, and related materials, if that's also going to be used in that next sentence. But I would make those 2 consistent, and
Yes, that makes sense.
yeah, okay.
And we said to add prior to the beginning of work. I think, Tom, you said that, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. We all care about this project, and it's we've been nurturing it. Okay, the oral history project, and thank you all for your deliberations and conversations. Is everybody okay with how we resolved that one, or people pretty comfortable? Peter, you okay? Okay. All right, oral history preservation and access project for the Concord Free Public Library. The CPA funds shall be used to digitize and describe a collection of almost 500 recordings of Concord oral histories, many of which are only available on audio cassettes. And I think that's straightforward. And does anybody else see any reason to? Okay.
Oh, just a question.
I
had a question. Oh, go ahead, Tom.
No, please, John.
No, I just had a question as whether they are outsourcing this or are they doing it internally? Because we don't have anything in here about contracts.
My understanding is it's a combination of internal work and external work. I think they've got some interns that are coming in to do that work. It was what I remember, John.
I think that was explicit in their
Their
application.
proposal, yes. Yes.
So,
Oh,
so you're
go
thinking is we don't need any, to review any contracts, or that they need to submit any contracts like everybody else?
I don't believe so.
Simple.
Can somebody else pull it up fairly quickly?
I'm trying to get it right now.
Mine's across a crowded room and I'm happy to look and see, but,
Anka did such
okay.
a very well expanded application.
Did you remember, it's a lengthy application.
Yes, it is. Hang on, I'm trying to see. I think it's a company that has to do the digitizing and the transfer.
Yeah.
Contracted transcription services, $11,900, Adept Word Management. And the service would be to transcribe 70 audio. There it is, right there.
There it is.
There,
Thank you.
good, Kevin. Heather, you beat me.
Fantastic. And there's massproductions.net. I guess we need a contract paragraph on this one too, Heather, okay?
Okay, I will add one.
Thank you very much. Anka has worked with these people before, so she's pretty confident about the quality of their work. Tom?
Thanks, Diane. I had maybe this question at the beginning of this proposed application, and that is, I work with a lot of libraries and rare manuscript collection facilities. So the ideas and the content is in, let's say, the oral history spoken word, but the vessel is the actual audio cassette.
Yes.
The device itself. Do we care what happens with that? Because in many of the facilities I work with, you're really trying to make sure that the original vessel is not discarded, because the stuff that gets digitized often is fleeting. It's very hard to sustain that long term. And whether it's a CD or a VHS tape or an audio cassette tape or whatever the different, or a LP record or whatever it is, a lot of facilities are going through great pains to try to retain that original vessel, because of the particular quality of the recording, which can make a difference, and it gets cleaned up when you digitize. I just didn't know if we had an opinion about this. This is, many of which are available only on audio cassettes. And do they digitize it and then these things go in the dumpster? And do we care? I'm not sure I know the
I
answer.
can't imagine Anka throws anything away.
Well, they do for some facilities,
Okay.
because they just simply run out of space.
Run out of space. Would
Yeah.
you like to recommend to her that we have a discussion about that? Should we, what is your suggestion? Should we recommend that Karen
I guess
consider?
I'm not trying to kind of inflate something into a bigger issue, but I just thought I'd ask, because I know it does come up.
It's wonderful.
And from,
Yeah.
Oh, and
We
I,
could just ask. We could just ask.
You can
Yeah.
send her an email and ask and have her
yeah,
update for the next
something
meeting.
simple. Yeah.
and Heather, just for the sake of people who didn't know, the Tom to which you were referring earlier was Tom Wilson. In conversation, and not Tom Kearns. I mean, so I just
Thank you.
want to make sure that that's clear. Okay. Thank you. That's a wonderful, thank you, Tom. That's the reason you're here in so many ways. You're wonderful. Okay, Assabet River Bluff Preservation. And it reads as follows: the CPA funding shall go towards the acquisition of a parcel of land for both open space and community housing project. The title of the property shall be in the name of the town of Concord. Any permanent signs placed on the property shall include an acknowledgement of CPA funds. Now, is it the town of Concord? Is the Concord Housing, that name I never remember, that great big long name.
The trust.
Housing, I'll just call it the trust. Is it in the name of the trust? Is it in the name of the town of Concord? Are those synonymous? are those co-equal terms?
I need to check with Marcia on that, because it also might depend on the two parcels of land. The open space parcel may be going to natural resources. So I need to check with her on that, and I can update that condition once I get a response from her.
Heather, if it were to go to natural resources, wouldn't that still be in the property of the town?
I believe so.
I believe
yes.
natural resources under the aegis of the town. So
Mhm.
to the degree that this is a legal issue, it may be important, but this is not going to be before the town on the warrant. John,
Oh, it's just a question whether we need to specify the parcel of land. Or are we just leaving it wide open to the separate article to declare the land?
I don't
Right,
understand.
it's up to you if you guys want a condition in there, because we did discuss that like parcel A would be or open space, and then parcel B was community housing, or it might be opposite. So I can add a condition speaking to that if you guys would like that in there.
John, do you feel that specificity is important in this case?
Mightn't it change though?
Yeah, that was my question.
I don't think it can.
So it's pretty well set
I mean, I
right
think
now.
Okay,
is delineated, at least according to Stuart, as I understood our conversations, once that line is drawn and once we know that partial is going to be absolutely for open space.
because
Yeah.
that's what everyone's voting on. Okay, maybe we should specify that then.
Okay.
On a related note,
But it's for both.
I'm wondering if we could have some type of a reference to the supplemental piece of information that was dated December 17th, which talked about specifically how the land would be delineated
Yeah.
between affordable housing and also open space.
Yeah, because we saw so many different versions, didn't we? It'd be good to be clear which one.
And this did a very, very nice job of laying out the difference between the two on the project narrative.
All
What
right.
was the date on that again, Peter?
December 17th.
Yeah.
Marcia, I believe, submitted this
Yes.
before her presentation.
Yeah, that was great.
Extremely helpful.
This is all such good conversation, Charles, and then John, your hand is still up. Do you want it up? Okay, Charles.
Oh, I just would not, I think it's not proper to say this will be specified exactly, because in the one of the documents that I saw said that small adjustments, if necessary, could be made on the boundary. And that's important. When you're putting in housing, that's important.
Well, you're right, Charles, but my understanding from Stuart is that when we present this to the town, when it finally goes before the town, that line has to be very clearly delineated. Now we can go back to Stuart and ask him, is that your impression as well, Heather? He was quite explicit about this when we spoke with him.
Yeah, I'm thinking maybe because I know Marcia had said that the split I think was 60-40 if I'm remembering
I think it was
correctly.
70-30. but I
70-30, yeah.
Yeah.
So
30, I
I can find that exact split and maybe make the condition that not reference parcel A and parcel B, but that there will be a parcel that is 70% open space and 30% designated to affordable housing. That way, if the property lines need to be amended a little bit, we don't run into any issues there as long as they're keeping the 70-30 split.
I like that proposal.
Charles, are you comfortable with that?
Sure.
Sarah, you're comfortable with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Paul?
I think Peter's right. For purposes of memorializing that supplemental information and kind of linking it to these conditions, I think we just should refer to that particular document. We don't have to get into detail in the conditions, but I think referencing that document here, the conditions would be
A good idea.
appropriate. I
Yeah,
think so.
I agree.
Fantastic. So we will not make a final kind of vote as it were on F until we see how that plays out in terms of specificity. Is that all right? So when we make a motion, it will not include so far D and F. Is that all right with everybody? Are there any other changes you'd like to make with that one? Okay. Junction Village open space. I want to publicly say that Charlene Hempel is amazing. She has been so articulate, and increasingly, as she's been presenting this in various committees that I've had the privilege of attending, she's gotten better and better at, really knowing exactly what they're doing. It's been really impressive. So, but the Junction Village open space, the CPA funding shall be used to create passive open space on 6.5 acres of land along the Assabet River as it stretches behind the NCI property and perpendicular to Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. The project scope involves a multi-year process that will begin with general design and invasive plant removal, which will evolve to a developed parkland with interpretive signage, a pollinator meadow, gathering spaces, and public art. Now, the only contractual obligation I think they might have in the coming year is with the Christopher Heights company, who is going to give them some money to make some of this possible. They may have to buy trees. They may be and I don't think they're putting in trees yet, but I know they want to get them going as early as possible. Do we need, again, a contract statement for them?
Isn't that a donation, not a contract?
I don't
They
know.
would be getting a donation, I think, towards, it was like $15,000 or
That's
something.
exactly right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it's just a donation.
Okay. What if they want to go and buy some trees?
Well, that's not a contract, it's purchase.
Okay. Okay. That's just a purchase.
I mean,
agreement.
it seems small, right?
Okay. I don't know. I just want to be sure that we're clear.
Well, 15,000.
I certainly have the same questions about multi-year process that isn't specific. I mean, I just turn something on its head. Is this a multi-year process that we need to know more about? Should they submit contract plans as they go forward? Should they submit contracts? Should they be subject to the same detail as everyone else?
I believe they have been, actually, John. I mean, I think they've been quite specific about what they want to do. And they've demonstrated that it will take about 3 years to complete the project. The first is to remove invasives, to prepare the land, to establish clear guidelines. Sarah.
So
and then-
might we specify that the funding for this year is to do with that last sentence, the general design and invasive plant removal, because the funding is not for the multi-year process, the funding is for that specific point, right?
That
Yeah.
baseline work.
Yep.
Sure.
We just need to tweak in language slightly.
Have you got
So
that?
What would you like me to add?
Maybe you could say that something like
Do you want me to just take out multi-year process and just say the project scope involves general design, invasive plant removal, just take out multi-year process? Just so it's more clear.
I thought the thinking was to be clear what they were going to accomplish in year one.
Right.
yeah,
That's a good point,
Yes,
John.
so that would,
you could say with year one, including
Including-
general design and invasive plant removal, or
or phase-
comprised of general design or something like that.
Okay. And then if you want, I can also add a condition that the final set of plans is submitted for the file. Because I know I think we're looking at a conceptual plan. I think it was kind of a final conceptual plan. But maybe once they have their final set of plans, they can submit it, so we have it in the file.
And the urgency for this phase of work is connected with the work that's going to be going on, the construction work that's going on with the other project.
Christopher Heights, exactly.
Thank you, the Christopher Heights.
Is there
project.
any concern that if the
Carefully
timing separates with the Christopher Heights piece and all the earth moving around, is there anything we need to worry about there? If they come disconnected from a time point of view?
You mean if Christopher Heights or Junction Village doesn't go forward?
or if it doesn't go forward in the timing that we're thinking, I guess the money would just wait until they were ready.
My understanding was it was the actual use of the heavy equipment.
Yeah,
So they don't have to, in fact, rent that heavy equipment themselves. Am I
Right.
misunderstanding? I mean, that was my
no, I think
recollection.
that's right. Yeah,
And so therefore, it's, you know, I think they're gonna go hand in glove. You know, it may spill
Yeah.
over to the following whatever. It may not be all done right then, but it is really the
Mhm.
use of that heavy equipment.
yeah. No, I was just thinking if for whatever reason the heavy equipment part of the project was delayed, or but I guess it just means that this part would be delayed as well. The funding would still be there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
then they have to come back and say, actually, we couldn't do anything.
Yes.
Maybe we reapply for next year, right?
Yeah.
Or don't can't projects be extended for good cause?
Absolutely.
So that could also happen.
Great.
Paul?
Yeah, so I was going to say, while it is likely that they're going to come before us next year, the CPC, and ask for additional funding, I don't think that the language here should prejudice that. I mean, I think we should focus on just what's going to be accomplished here. We can refer to a long-term project, but the multi-year kind of seems to imply that CPC will fund it year after year,
Yeah.
which is probably true, but I don't think we got to put it in here.
We don't know, do we? Because we don't know what funding we'll have. Paul, that's
We
such a
don't. We don't know. Yeah.
okay. Both you and John have made fantastic comments, and Sarah, thank you. This is good. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so we will not, until we see amended language, we won't vote on G. Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. I'm going to ask Peter, would you run the meeting for a moment? I have to excuse myself for just a second. I'll be back.
Sure. So just to follow up in terms of how Diane's been proceeding with this basically states for the first part of this, CPA funding shall be used to provide desired enhancements, including a connection to the prison cemetery, additional landscaping, screening, benches, signage, and other amenities to enrich and enhance the visitor experience along the Bruce Freeman Rail Trail. And then secondly, the applicant shall submit general descriptions of the incurred expenses as they arise.
What was the project amount there again? It was greatly reduced. I remember.
Yeah.
Yes,
Peter,
it was significantly reduced. It was reduced from $300,000 to $30,000.
Oh,
I'm sorry,
okay.
reduced from $570 to $30,000.
Peter, this was the language that was in there when it was a big project.
Oh, there it is.
Now that it's been reduced, I think we should check with Marcia to see whether
I drafted this with the language for her last updated memo that
Oh,
reduced it to 30,000. So this was her supplemental, when it got reduced to 30,000, this was what she was requesting a 30,000 for.
Okay.
This doesn't reflect the reduced scope.
Yeah, that's fine. If she agreed, I was just thinking that perhaps all these elements aren't going to be in there for 30,000. But if that's what she says, then that's fine with me.
Excellent.
And that was a big reduction in project scope.
Yeah, it really was.
Well, it was the fencing, and I do understand that off the record that the White Pond folks are up in arms about the loss of that fencing. So I think this is an issue that's going to. We may hear this again.
So I was going to ask Heather the question: do we expect an application next year for this with the increased scope?
She has been back every year.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay.
Can someone remind me, the prison cemetery, that I'm not thinking that links to this part of the project.
Prison cemetery is over near the Route 2 bridge. It's not in this area. We would
Okay,
think-
I'm getting the two projects muddled up. Okay, good.
Yeah,
So that does make sense then. Okay, thank you.
I
Just
was
checking.
confused too. It's part of the trail system, but it's not at White Pond.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, the trail indeed goes right by the cemetery there.
Okay. Thank you.
So
Thank you.
other comments about these conditions?
Yeah, well, Heather, is the thinking that it's such a small amount of money, we wouldn't need to see any contracts?
Yeah, and I think that's why we have the line about just a general description of every incurred expense that comes up. We don't want to, my file cabinets are very full already. I have no room for another file cabinet.
Well, these are mostly going to be straightforward purchases under a certain amount of money. Probably.
And do we have a sign there already?
That says that Heather only has one file cabinet. No. I don't think we have a sign there.
Excuse me.
I just wondered if we have a sign yet on the rail trail.
Oh, someplace on the rail trail? I don't know. That's a good question.
I don't know. I would assume we do. I can add a condition if you'd like me to.
I've never seen a CPC sign on the rail trail.
And a lot of people see it or will see it.
I can add a condition that a CPA sign is installed somewhere along the Bruce Truman Rail Trail.
That would be divine.
What about the idea of some type of a permanent sign? I mean, this is something that's going to see a lot of use.
I think we could even do one of the big signs can be used as a permanent sign as well. Or if there was a better location for a small plaque or a couple small plaques along the rail trail in different locations, maybe that's a discussion I can sit down and have with Marcia.
Isn't there something in West Concord, a sign by the kiosk or somewhere around there? I can't remember. Never mind.
There's a map right at near Junction Park, across the street.
Oh,
That might be a good spot for the sign, but it's a map. It's not a CPC
Yeah.
sign.
okay, got it.
Although we've contributed quite a bit to that little park and to that little area. Yeah,
That's a great part.
it is a wonderful park. And there is going to be a Junction Park open meeting, a public hearing tomorrow from 4 to 6. So if you're interested in that park, and concerns about it, this is a good thing to join. Okay, the Assabet River Bridge, pedestrian bridge. The CPA funding shall be used to continue the development of complete architectural plans, full structural and construction drawings that meet the requirement of Mass DOT specification, estimates, and final permitting needed for construction of the Assabet pedestrian bridge. The guarantee shall submit a copy. The guarantee shall submit a copy of the signed contract or contracts for the work of to be completed by CPA funds prior to the start of the work. So I think that one is pretty straightforward. And given the additional information that we received from Marcia, I think that the details are fulsome.
Mhm.
Perhaps, Heather, we could attach Marcia's material for that on this, with this project. Just because it would help for anybody looking it up, and wanting to clarify things, that would be extremely helpful. Okay, Recreation Facility Strategic Plan, Concord Recreation Department, the CPA funds shall be used to hire a qualified consultant firm to update the town's recreation facility strategic plan. The selected consultant will work with recreation staff, Recreation Commission members, town departments, and other community stakeholders to plan and execute a robust assessment of needs while engaging in hands-on, collaborative, inclusive, and holistic public participation process. Beautifully written.
So Diane, there are actually going to be two
Yeah.
documents there. One is an RFP,
Right.
and then there's going to be a contract to the consultant. I don't know what the CPC wants to see.
But then it goes on to say, the plan acknowledges the support of the CPC for the funding the project, and a copy of the updated plan should be submitted. I think I don't think we need to make that specification, Paul.
Okay.
I would like to see the contract.
Okay. I thought that was implicit when we say they will be hiring a consultant.
Well, it doesn't say that we'll see the contract.
Good, all right. I stand amended. Gorgeous.
I think that's a good idea because the contract's going to reflect the scope of work, which
Okay,
is going to reflect the RFP. So we'll be able to make sure it's all in there. I actually may have to recuse myself for that whole piece because I'll probably be helping Anna in writing the RFP on the Recreation Commission. So just note that for the future.
and thank you for your help with that. I mean, it's invaluable. Okay, staff and technical support, Town of Concord. And Heather will recuse herself, that the CPA funds shall be used to support the CPA in Concord by providing staff support from the Department of Planning and Land Management, legal, technical, and consulting assistance for the town's CPA funded projects, supplies and associated administrative requirements, including legal ads, copying, etc., and funding to purchase the CPA signage. All set on that one?
So
And then
what's the percentage that can go to administrative and technical support from CPA funds?
10% of your total
Right.
allocation for the year.
Okay, thank you.
So general provisions for all projects. The applicant shall acknowledge the Concord Community Preservation Fund support for this project on any website and in all press releases, publicity materials, news, and written or oral communications or announcements. To the degree applicable, a temporary sign acknowledging CPC fund support for the project shall be installed at the site. A temporary sign will be provided by the CPC. Any significant changes to the project from what was represented in the application and during the project selection process shall be approved in advance in writing by the CPC. Progress reports shall be submitted at least once a year and more often as requested by the committee until the completion of the project. Stuart Saganor in our conversations has suggested that we ask for more regular updates from our projects.
Good idea.
Perhaps do we want to amend this comment to say an every 3-month accounting,
Yeah, quarterly or something.
quarterly accounting? Heather, I don't want to burden you with a lot of work, but what makes the most sense?
We used to do twice a year. And the feedback that we always got was that it was too onerous on applicants and that nothing really had changed that much between the two updates, that it seemed like more work than necessary because not that much work had happened in between the two updates. So the once a year update seemed to work better, and that's what we switched it to about 2 years ago, I think.
Okay. What's the feeling of?
If nothing's happening, why is it hard?
Because they still have to fill out the form and
Is the form the problem? Is the form onerous? Oh, I don't think I've seen the form.
yeah, it's the form that they submit every time they submit an update.
Yeah, it's like a 1-page form and it's a 3-page report. Is that what it turns out to be?
Yeah.
Doesn't sound
Well,
too
for all
bad.
the funding we're giving,
Doesn't sound too bad.
I think I better be quiet on this one.
Yeah, no.
John and then Paul.
Yeah, I like the discretionary language more often as requested, because I think
Yeah,
That works too.
then we could be focused in what we thought we needed.
right. And we added that when we changed it to 1 year, so that if there were projects that we needed more reports more often to kind of check in on it, that we can request them.
Okay,
But
And
that if there were projects that, maybe work hasn't even started on them, then it made sense to keep it at once a year.
Who makes that determination though, Heather?
I think the committee would. I think in a meeting, if you say, hey, what's going on with this project? Can we get an update? I can send an email and say, hey, can you fill out the project status report form because it's been requested.
Okay, well then we need probably to add to our agenda on a pretty regular basis. And you usually do actually, project update reports are just a reminder that it's time to review whether we need them.
Yeah, it's next on our agenda. We usually have it on, but when we're kind of like in the craziness of reviewing applications and voting, we generally don't have time on the agenda for it.
No, you're absolutely right. John, you wanted to keep going on this? No? John, no, okay. Paul and then Tom.
Yeah, so if the public has any questions about these projects, they could come to us and say, what's the update? But given the experience with the Assabet Bluff project, I'm wondering if there's a general provision or as a condition that community and public engagement or briefings, periodic briefings. I mean, some of these are very sensitive community projects. I know that one, and there was a bit of blowback from the Emerson Field project where some of the abutters had no idea what was going on and they felt that they were in the dark. Is there some provision for community updates other than asking us for project updates? And I wouldn't apply this to all projects, but are the specific projects that we think might benefit from that kind of community update or
Well, perhaps we can put that in the general agreements, Paul, where community, where the project has an impact on the community or the neighborhoods, something to the effect that we expect or we trust that there will be regular communication with the abutters.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a great idea. I was going to recommend it for next year's applications that be a provision requirement in the application for certain types of projects. But I do think the whole issue we really need to elevate that a little bit to kind of head off some consternation.
I think that's wise, and we certainly spent a lot of time balancing that whole issue with the Assabet River Bluff project. And I think it turned out well in the end, I think, but it was not without its turmoil. Tom and then Sarah.
Thanks, Dan. Heather, I'm just trying to recall on that one. Didn't we have submitted once a year and try to do that by March 15th? What I was recalling was as we're trying to determine if we can close out projects and if there's potentially monies that would be returned, trying to get all that done before town meeting.
Before July, before the end of June.
But yes, but the report, is that what we wanted, the reports before the end of June? Or
Right,
I just wondering,
right.
should there be progress reports shall be submitted at least once a year, no later than March 15th, or something like that, that gives us time to do the evaluation and to see if it has any meaning in the the process that we're going through. I'm not sure that's the right date, but it seemed like we did have a kind of date tied to the once a year. I'm not sure about that.
Yeah, I don't remember the date.
Okay.
But I can certainly send out a reminder to everyone with open projects to submit their status reports.
I think it'd be better
by
maybe
our April meeting.
well, better than maybe they're trickling in throughout the year. That
Right.
there's a way.
No,
for
they
us to be-
generally don't trickle in. They generally
Yeah.
only send them when I send them an email requesting them.
I think for us to be kind of planful with our time and also to put it in sync with other things that are happening. I don't know the exact date, but I think that might be helpful.
I think that's really prudent. Peter, do you remember anything about this specifically, or John, in our discussions in the past? Okay.
No.
I just to give people who've been doing this for a while a chance to think about that. Tom, I think this is important because, among other things, if we discover that there's a project that is not using its resources or money, and when we connect with them, we realize they're not going to, that may give us some additional funding. So I don't know if March is well.
Well, if there were funds returned, it would go into the next cycle. It wouldn't impact us. It wouldn't impact us directly, but I just think it's more timely maybe than the beginning of the fall when we're receiving new applications, when we've got other things to focus on. But
I can add maybe some language in like something about the spring, and staff will contact you with a specific date each year or something like that. Because our meeting schedules change year to year.
Recently, this is true. Yeah. Sarah and then Paul.
I just wanted to add a comment about the suggestion, which I like, about putting in a statement about public, sharing with the public the intention of a program. But I think, if I remember correctly with the Assabet River one, I think there was a public meeting, but there was just a lot of misunderstanding about exactly what was in it, and not everybody was invited. And so I think maybe we should just use language like, should make every effort to ensure that, all relevant abutters or the public are aware. I'm just thinking out loud that we can't really be very specific about it, because there's so many different ways of doing this, and it really depends on the program. But I do agree a general statement makes sense.
I think calling attention to it is important, given our experience and given the experience that Paul relates to the Emerson. That's gorgeous, Sarah. Thank you. Paul?
Well, just, I don't want to overplay this, but I think as a general provision and maybe as a requirement of the applicant, I think something to this effect should be in there. Where appropriate, the community should be briefed on the progress of projects if they're in motion, or on the application. I think on both ends of this. So I'd like to see something.
Your conversation has sparked an idea. Maybe on the application, Paul, we could say, if relevant, if your project involves abutters, public abutters and property abutters of any kind, have you connected with those abutters, and in what way have you done so?
Right, and I think that's perfect, and they'd have to kind of show that in the application.
Right.
Well, isn't that an ongoing responsibility of any town managed projects, to contact the abutters from the beginning and to maintain contact with them?
No,
I know the National Park made general updates in their newsletter.
Well, one would hope so.
So that's different. So those are
We
different.
ran into one where that didn't happen.
It's actually not. In the Recreation Commission, and Matt Johnson was there, and somebody in the public asked him, aren't the abutters required to be notified? The answer is no, unless there's through the planning board, there's a building project. So yes, if there are buildings going up, yes, but something like Assabet Bluff, as it develops, it's not clear. So it's not hardwired now. So Diane, I agree. I think it would benefit us to put something in the application, and then on this end, maybe it's a general provision to keep the public informed, because some of these projects, Assabet Bluff and some of these others, are going to go on for a while. They are community involved construction projects, and
And I think just regular community, everything comes down in the end, doesn't it? No matter what we're doing, to communication, open connection with people so people know what's going on. And that's, I'm not in any organization or engagement where that's not critical. And Paul, I think anything we can do to encourage that is a service to all. It reminds the town, and it reminds.
It's just a little anecdote. Not that I look at next door neighbor very often on social media, but there was a lot of dialogue recently on CPC. It wasn't Concord. It started in Newton and then spread it. Like, what is this mysterious CPC? Where's our tax money going? Where'd that happen? It's a bit of the CPA is a bit mystery to a lot of public. So it would behoove us to kind of demystify it a little bit wherever we can.
That's brilliant. Thank you. So Heather, does that make sense to you in terms of language? Okay. All right. Upon completion of the project or portion of the project completed with CPA funds, the applicant shall notify the CPC in writing that the work for which the CP funds were allocated has been completed in accordance with the application as modified with CPC approval. The project portion of the project for which CPA funds have been made available shall be completed within 30 months following town approval, unless the CPC grants an extension for good reasons and good cause.
There you go.
Okay, this is gorgeous. We made enough amendments to it that I think we'll wait till the next time or next meeting to try to approve the final wording, if that's okay with everybody. And thank you for the very good and attentive work. Heather, project update report. I didn't see one in the materials. Was there one?
Yes.
Oh, what was it?
I can share my screen. Let me just open it real quick.
It's on the website.
I looked.
So it's this
Open
This-
project.
spreadsheet, the open project spreadsheet.
Okay,
So this is just a spreadsheet that has a list of all of our open projects, what year they were approved, the amount of funding that was allocated, the amount of funding that was expended and remaining, and then any notes that I may have on it. Anything highlighted, I need to go in and double check the amount remaining in admins and make sure I haven't missed anything and haven't forgotten to update this spreadsheet. So those numbers may be tweaked a little bit. And then anything in red at the bottom are projects that can be closed at the end of the year.
Oh, great.
So I will send an email to all of these applicants about submitting project status reports.
thank you so much.
I had a question about two of these.
Okay, go, Charles, that's been.
One was on the first page, the Emerson Conservation Restriction. Funds toward acquisition of conservation restriction, $210,000. Well, I wasn't here when that was approved, but is the intent that I believe that this is a property that the town has acquired from the Emerson Family Trust. And are we going to pay them for the conservation restriction?
So
Okay.
so the town is buying the rights to the conservation restriction. The Emerson Trust will still retain ownership of the land, but the town will basically own the rights to the land because they own the conservation restriction on it.
And it precludes development and all kinds of other things. So basically you're buying down some of the value of the property for development.
And I'll just add, this was actually discussed at the NRC at our last meeting, so it is moving along.
Oh, thank you.
So we will basically be giving the Emerson Family Trust that contribution.
Yes, essentially.
Makes sense. And the other one was that the Assabet River pedestrian bridge construction drawings and permitting was on the second page. Did it last year already.
It's been a multi-year process.
So what we're trying to do, what they're trying to do, they're trying to accumulate funds to
Yes.
be able to do it.
No, they've been doing it this whole time. So they've been working, it's like a multi-phase process to develop these plans and survey the land,
Right.
find the right location for the bridge, that sort of thing. So they've not been banking this money, it's being spent.
Well, I know that, but nothing's been spent.
It has been spent.
It doesn't say, I don't see a
Which number?
number 819. It's on the second page.
Right, and that's what I said,
Third page.
because it's highlighted, I need to check, I need to go through and update this spreadsheet in that amount remaining.
I see. In other words, they have been spending this money. Okay.
Correct,
Right,
correct.
okay. All right, that's what I had.
And Heather, is the plan to have this document go live at some point, or is it live?
This document?
Yeah.
No, it's not live, but hopefully at each meeting I'll have an update. I'll have like an updated spreadsheet at each meeting.
Then we have a responsibility to look for this. I didn't realize there had been changes to it, and that's really a helpful reminder for all of us. John?
Yeah, Heather, when it says all funds encumbered, it's over on page 4. Does that mean we got the money back?
No, that means that they have like a purchase order for the project. So they have, all of the funds are encumbered in a purchase order. They may not have been spent yet, but they've been set aside in a specific purchase order.
Thank you.
Good question, John. Thank you.
Heather, this is really helpful. This really helps to sort of have us look back and see what the status of the projects are, and provides a good foundation for looking forward as well.
Mhm.
And I will try to update the spreadsheet and update those numbers. It's been hard keeping track of them with, you know, all the crazy application process we've had. I've kind of forgotten to update it. So that's why I need to go back through and double check all those numbers that are highlighted.
Well,
The
thank
ones
you.
that are not highlighted, I've already checked.
Well, this is not only is it helpful, but it reminds us of how important it is to keep checking back with people.
Yeah.
You know, how are you doing? You know, so the very conversation we just had, you know, doesn't it nicely colludes with this particular conversation.
Sometimes the money comes back a bit.
Every once in a while, we get some money back, which is very nice.
Very nice.
Other business, approval of the minutes. Heather, I sent you one question. And was that not appropriate, or was that not inappropriate?
I thought I responded in my email to you.
Oh, I didn't see that. Go ahead.
So Diane had asked for clarification when Larry Sorley was talking about the preparation of the preservation restriction. He said that it should be done prior to the plans for the plans for the building being completed. And that was correct. He said that you shouldn't develop a preservation restriction thinking of what you want to do with the building. A preservation restriction should be developed before you develop plans for what you're doing to the building, because if you're developing them in conjunction, then you may not put something in a preservation restriction because you want to change it in your proposed plans. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay. It was the word "not" in his statement that I found confounding. And so, Heather, thank you for that.
Oh, where it is exactly. Where is that?
I did it out.
Oh, I see.
Okay.
Yeah.
John.
Yeah, it's supposed to be based on the resource.
Right.
Yeah.
So much to learn, so little time.
Yeah, I got it.
So, John,
Yeah.
you had your hand up, John. Do you, or no? Okay. All right. So may I hear a motion to accept the minutes, please?
So moved.
Thank you. A second.
Second.
Thank you, Tom. All in favor, raise your hand. It is unanimous, and I do so declare. Okay. Any new business or any other items people wish to bring up? Okay, Sarah won't be with us on the 15th. And maybe Burton will be back with us on the 15th. We'll have to see what is. You're going to be in the UK, Sarah. Take care of yourself. Travel well.
Thank you. But I think we have another meeting before then.
We do.
We have the FinCom meeting.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, that's the FinCom meeting. Okay, got it. Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, okay. That scared me.
FinCom meeting is
That's
three.
the third.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
Right.
And do you,
John,
Diane, do you think the FinCom meeting will be on exclusively in person? Or will they?
I don't know, John. they've been changing back and forth. The town caucus was in person. The,
It was
select-
both, I think.
the
wasn't
select board, I'm so sorry.
I think it was both.
No,
The
it was,
caucus-
it was
It was
not,
only,
it
oh,
was,
really?
it was filmed, but it was not a simultaneous,
Oh, okay.
because of the laws, because the,
Oh, right, right, right.
Maybe Heather could let us know whether we,
Yeah, I'll let you know. I'm
That would be
sure it'll be on Zoom. I mean,
okay,
we
good.
hold HDC meetings twice a month, and those are all public hearings, and they're held on Zoom. So I'm sure it'll be on Zoom and everyone else can join via Zoom. But I will double check on that.
It may be a hybrid meeting, John.
thank you.
And I guess that's what we have to figure out.
And,
Okay.
and town meeting is May 1st?
May 1st. Mhm.
May 1st, Sunday, okay.
And for those of you who've looked at the old version of the warrant, there were some switches, and I can be quite specific. Items 30 to 37 were swapped with items 40 to 45, with the intention of putting high public interest issues a little bit earlier in the meeting rather than later, moving enterprise funds to later. And so that's been consummated and approved by the select board. Linda, you've been wonderfully patient. Do you have anything to add or any comments you'd like to offer?
You know, we heard some, thank you. We heard some discussion at the select board meeting on Monday night that there seems to be some preference to try to go live now with meetings going forward. But I think the jury's still out on that.
Okay.
And that could also change. And as you pointed out, I think we may likely have to stay hybrid.
Okay. Thank you, Linda.
Yeah. And then the other thing is, when you have a chance to read the warrant, you'll see the warrant article on Assabet River Bluff. And so that'll answer some questions about how it's being delineated, because I heard you talking about that.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you all. You guys are fantastic.
Just
Okay.
one question, Diane. Is there any indication that our article would be on the consent calendar, or is that too early to know?
Carmen Reese said at the last select board meeting, or the select board meeting when they were discussing the warrant, that she felt that in the past, people had wanted to go item by item on the CPC. So barring some massive resurgence of COVID, or a new variant in this mischievous virus, it sounds to me as if she intends that we'll go item by item by item, John.
She did benchmark that, however, with, you're right, Diane, she did indicate that, but she did benchmark that, I think, by also saying that, it's likely that town meeting will go on to Monday night.
Yeah.
And it could go on to Tuesday night. She really hopes it's only Sunday and Monday.
Right.
So she, I think some of that will also get figured out closer to the time of the town meeting.
And whether we're going to be outside on a field or there's just much that we still don't know.
Exactly.
And Carmen and the select board were so graciously flexible. as we, that old saying, if you want to make God laugh, have a plan. So, we clearly, we having plans hasn't worked out so well the last couple of years. So we'll see what happens. Thank you all so much. Have a lovely evening. Stay safe and stay well. Bye.
You just get a motion to adjourn.
Motion to
Right.
adjourn.
Nancy says
Second.
we adjourn. Tom, you say yes?
That was, I moved.
Okay, how many in favor? Except we don't have to do a roll call on this.
I.
Okay.
Aye.
It is so approved. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Hi, everybody. Good to see you.